Hey, Bass Geek here, and this is part 2 of finding deep bass on a new lake. The audio is going to be awful on this. It rained all day, wind, rain. So I really couldn't get my microphone out, really couldn't do a lot of stuff on the water. So I'm going to give you the setup of this day and kind of what was going on. So in video 1, we talked about maps. Video 2, I kind of showed you what we were doing, and how really I don't go fishing when I'm out on the lake. Now, day 2, it's kind of the same thing. We're not going to do a lot of fishing. This video is not going to have a lot of fish catching in it. This is a new lake. It's a big lake with a lot of offshore structure possibilities. So it's going to take several days or several weeks of me going to this lake to really put in the time that I need to put in on my graphs. And again, guys, that's kind of what you're running into. You're running into this sort of deal where you're really going to have to spend the time on the graphs. You're not going to get to do a lot of fishing. But the good thing about this, a lot of times these areas are going to pay off for months and years to come. Deep water structure, deep water ledge, deep water bass, offshore structure, whatever you want to call it, can really be the most consistent bite of the year. It's really fun. I enjoy doing it. I enjoy finding them, and I definitely enjoy catching them. So we're going to search an entirely different section of the lake this time, and I really want to set it up for you. The deep bite isn't at its apex right here. Most of the time, the water temperature that I'm looking for when I first get to the lake, before the sun is up, maybe first light, we'll say safe light, I want that water temp to be 78 degrees. That's when it kind of starts. Now, it can be tough. There might not be a lot of them out there, but that's generally the water temperature that they start getting active, they start feeding. There's a few of them out there, and you start getting some schools. Now, it tends to get better in that lower to mid 80s. 80 to 85 is when they really tend to stack, and when you really can get out there and get a school fired up and catch them. Now, as we get up closer to 90, they're going to start slowing down. So closer to that 90-degree temperature, you're going to have to really start using those slow moving baits. Let me give you a rundown of the day's conditions. You can tell it's rainy, it's windy, it's going to be this way all day, it's going to be overcast all day. There's a front moving through. Air temperature is going to start out at about 65. It's going to get up to maybe 80, maybe 81. In between video 1, day 1, and now day 2, part 2 of this, it's, there's a lot of rain. And so it actually cools the water temps off from about that 78, 79, 80 degree, whatever it was on day 1, to about 76 to 77 to start today. We start looking in a whole new area of the lake, but this time, to my surprise, we actually start right off with finding some decent groups of fish. The big thing, start with the obvious, like I was saying earlier. You want to start where the creek channels are touching these points. And here's a couple of dots, got a couple of fish there. Now here we've got some bait fish. That's the other thing. I like to throw a swim bait, so I'm going to want to set up to where there's some bait fish at. Now right here we go. We're starting to get a few more. Got a couple of nice little dots down there. Come right down here. Don't know if I'll spend a whole lot of time in that. May line up on that waypoint right there, make 2-3 casts, and see where it gets us. Here you can see we're dropping back out. Probably going to make one more cast. I want to cast with the natural current, and just so happens the wind is blowing this direction too. So right there, you can actually see a school of fish. We've went back and forth. What I've been doing is setting the waypoints so that it's from the beginning to the end of that school. So I know not to get on top of some of them and spook them up. So let me share with you my process once I find a school. So on my front graph, I actually have a casting ring set up of 35 feet. So when I pull up to the edge of that ring, it's 35 feet to the waypoint. So I set it at 35 because I know I can cast the 70 feet to the other side of the ring, which allows me to cast far enough past the waypoint and hopefully far enough past any of those fish to drop that bait to the bottom or at whatever level I want it to be, and then come straight into that school without dropping it right on their heads. You'll see me, as I get bit, kick my buoy over. I end up having to get down, grab the buoy, because, guys, I couldn't have done this twice. I managed to kick the buoy off its stand, and it literally landed in the water with the wake side up. I couldn't do that twice to save my life, so I just grabbed it, tossed it over, and it fell. Now that particular buoy is going to tell me where I'm casting from. The waypoint is where I'm casting to, but I would recommend to you guys who are just learning to do this and learning to line up is to use 2 buoys. Now don't drop the second buoy or where the waypoint would be. Don't drop it on the fish. Go past the fish, either to the left, to the right, or behind them until you no longer see fish, no longer see dots on your graph, and drop that buoy. That way you can get your line up. And then as you change your casting position on that school, once you get bit, then you drop your other buoy, and that tells you where you need to cast from, because you're trying to hit that school from a certain angle, from a certain position. Most of the time, that's what's going to trigger those bass to bite. So just as I was getting ready to catch my first fish off of this school, for some reason, whether it be because of the rain or whatever, the GoPro dies. Alright guys, this is how I grid a point. You can see I start up shallow and I work my way out. You can see some waypoints I've got right here. You can see a creek channel. This creek channel comes right up to it, and that's really what I'm looking for. So the first fish that I boated out of this school was about 3 pounds. I threw him in the box just long enough to keep him from spooking up the rest of the fish as I fished this school. That's when I noticed that the GoPro had died, so I got it cut back on. I also noticed that 2 gentlemen in a boat that were trolling baits noticed me catch this fish. So as I made my next few casts, I watched them troll their way closer and closer to me. I'll let the footage speak for itself. I really wanted to be a lot more hostile toward them. Maybe this was just me. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. But my opinion is I'm sitting here fishing a spot and you're going to troll right across it. Pieces of Alright guys, so one thing I want to make sure you know, I really target those steeper drop-offs and if there's a flat. So let's say these lines really spread out. Now you can see we're finding some fish. There's some fish out there. But so far, I'm not real enthused with what I'm finding right here. We're going to go back across this. Like I said, we're gridding. We're coming right back across this area right here where you can see the creek channel run up against. That's going to be an area that I target. I always make sure I check this backside though, because one of the big deals is that if the water hits that, it can actually create an eddy. You may not be able to see it like you do in a stream or a river, but it can actually create an eddy or a backflow around those points sometimes. And this is the main lake, and the water, the natural flow is going to be coming from in front of me to me right now. And we can see a couple of fish out here. So again, we're seeing them. They're right on top of that hump is where we're finding them right now. There's a couple more. These aren't really big dots. And you know, the other thing is, you know, I'm just not real enthused. Now here's a couple right here. Look, a couple of little better dots. But you know, these fish, man, when they're kind of spread out like this, they can be a little harder to catch. I want to find a bunch of them, and you can tell, you know, we're not really seeing anything on that side image, and that's getting me super enthused. Now let's spin us around here. And one of the things I pay real close attention to, you can see my boat wash right there, my prop wash. I try to stay about, you know, this far, about 10 to 15 feet. I really want to grid this well. I want to make sure that I'm really covering, saturating this point. You can see we're coming up right now, 25 foot of water. See where I'm staying at, and you know, maybe one sitting right there. These are few and far between now. Maybe something over there. We got some rock over there, so I don't know if you can see this. Let me, but you can see right in here we got some rock. There's what looks to be some fish out there. So we're gonna make another pass because we've seen some stuff here that might be all right. Sorry about the raindrops on the camera lens, guys, but this was the third and final fish of the day. I didn't want to waste much more time. I wanted to make sure that I was getting out graphing. We actually hit this spot from multiple directions, swung completely around until we finally got this bite. I hope this is helping you guys kind of see my process, how I go through finding these fish. You know, again, it's early in the season when this video takes place, and you know, the bass really aren't out there stacked up just quite yet. Now, we're going to be going back to that lake. We've got another lake that we're going to go check out, so we'll really get into and go through the breakdown on some clear water deep bass a little bit later on. If you've got any questions, as always, questions and comments in the comment section below. Anything you want to know or you want to see about this sort of fishing as the summer goes on, let me know. It should get better and better. We're going to fish several different lakes this year doing this sort of thing. As always, like it if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you ring that bell so you get the notifications when my videos come out. And you guys rock.